we have Minister Kevin Bernard via Zoom with us this morning to give us the latest COVID-19 update. Good morning, Minister Bernard. How are you?
Good morning, April, and good morning. I'm good to be here. I'm sorry about the current situation. I should have been on the show. But definitely it's a privilege to join you, Isani and April.
Thank you for being here.
There's a lot that has transpired over the past few months where COVID-19 and the country's response to the pandemic is concerned. I know that one of the recent developments that came out of last week, for instance, where we're saying Belizeans are now free to travel outside of the country without having to present any proof of vaccination. Let's start there, Minister, because my understanding as well is that this comes into effect before it's actually being taken to cabinet. I believe it's on account of the Prime Minister's travel outside of the country. Let's begin by getting your perspective on that and why this has become necessary.
Well, Isani and April, for quite some time now, let us go back to history. I mean, as you know, when COVID hit Belize back in 2020, there's a lot of measures that were put in place, and the advice I've been getting from my team is that it has now reached the point where, one, we have done a significant amount of effort as a country, as an ministry, to try and get people vaccinated. When you looked at the target population that we had targeted, we were almost at the average of 70%, 68.7 I think it was when we last checked. We started to vaccinate our younger population now between the age of 5 to 11, and while it is not going as what we would want it, that fast pace that we wanted to go, it's still going in the, we still believe that we will be able to reach the overall target that we had set for that age range from 5 and above at 70% by the end of September. Now, a lot of persons have approached the ministries, whether it is for business, whether it is for medical reasons, whether it is for personal reasons, that people needed to travel out. And we also believe that it has come to the time that we now need to remove all other restrictions. And so, having to have to write letters every week or every day, making these special requests for business people or for persons who are ill, and seeing that the low uptake of vaccine shows that those who have been vaccinated are those who rarely will be vaccinated. And so we have made the decision internally that we are now allowing persons who are unvaccinated to leave the country. This was a decision not taken just overnight, but it was something that we had thought out for quite a while. And while I know that the PM had to leave the country, myself and Minister Courtney, we both had discussions, and we both agreed, based on the recommendation of the Ministry of Health, of course, had agreed that we do an interim measure in the meantime until I can present the full cabinet paper, which will also speaks of many other issues in terms of the self-test and so forth. In order for us to be able to remove these restrictions. So in the interim, let me just repeat, however, in the interim, we are allowing unvaccinated persons to leave the country. However, they must, when they return, they must provide a negative test, as was the norm coming to the country. Because recall, we have allowed tourists to come into the country, whether they are vaccinated or not, but they had to present a negative test. And so Belizeans who needed to leave felt that it was not as well fair to them who needed to leave the country. And so it is that balancing act that we had to also look at. And while we held back on making this change, we now believe that it's time for us to remove that restriction and just increase our surveillance. That is one of the things that the ministry is going to be doing, increasing our surveillance, making sure that we are able to monitor persons coming across still. But at the end of the day, we feel that we must allow people Belizeans who are unvaccinated to leave the country, but upon return they must provide a negative test or be tested at entry point.
Minister, I wanted to get into a little bit of statistics here just for our viewers. When it comes to the ratio of testing versus those who are actually still getting vaccinated. So how are you seeing your numbers of testing versus the number of those that are getting vaccinated? Do you think that we are reaching a more of an increase for vaccination or more of an increase for testing only?
One of the things I mentioned when I was at the World Health Organization, and including the COVID summit that was held virtually a few months ago, we stressed on the issue of testing. You look at the region, testing was minimized, in fact, while other countries were reducing their restrictions. However, in Belize, let me say that in Belize, while we see the number of tests on a daily basis, testing is a norm. I mean, people still are going in to be tested. It is not in the numbers that used to be prior to this previous wave. However, we keep seeing a steady flow of persons going in to be tested. So that shows that Belizeans are aware. They are utilizing our facilities to be able to get tested. But the uptake of the vaccination has been very slow. As you notice, the numbers are slowly increasing. You know how far we've been at that overall population rate at 49, hovering over 49.1, 49.2, 49.3 for quite some time, not getting to that 50%. But now that we have the 5 to 11-year-old, I believe that, and the team believe that with the aggressive approach that we're going to be putting in, I mean, now that we have, we're almost out of classes for the younger children. I believe we are fully out of classes now. We are going to set up these mobile sites in our communities to ensure we can get and target most of these younger population as well. Adult vaccination may have dropped, but there's a reason for that. We only have the Johnson & Johnson vaccines in stock. We don't have the Pfizer AstraZeneca. We're about to receive a donation of these Pfizer and AstraZeneca for the adult population who wants to get their second dose, or for those who want to get their first dose. So you may have seen a drop in that because of the fact that we don't have the adult vaccination, since we had to, the Pfizers that we had come to an expiry date at the end of May. Now, currently on hand, we only have the pediatric vaccines along with the Johnson & Johnson, but we have noticed that there have been minimal efforts or minimal persons that has taken up the decision to utilize the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. For whatever reasons, that's their choice, and most persons have preferred the Pfizer or the AstraZeneca. So we are waiting for that. Hopefully within the next 3 or 4 weeks, we should be getting those vaccines, and we're going to continue to push for those who have not gotten their second shot or their booster. When you look at the numbers, however, in terms of the number of cases, daily cases, we were at a point where we were seeing 200 and something plus cases. I think just recently we had 172 cases. We've seen the number of active cases now fell from 2,000 almost plus to I think 1,000, a little over 1,000 cases. And from the indication that we're getting from the Epi unit, the reports coming to us, we should see the start of the decline of these number of cases, and hopefully by the end of this month or by mid-month, we should start to see our numbers going back pre-Omicron levels.
Quite interesting. Is this of concern to you guys at the ministry though? When you look at this particular wave and the number of infections in the 2,000 range, was this of any concern? I mean, we're not seeing casualties per se, which is a good thing, but still seeing those high numbers, I would want to think, raises some kind of concern for you guys on your end.
It did, of course it did, just as the previous one, Isani and April. However, what gives the ministry and the medical team some relief, as you rightly pointed out, is when you look at the number of hospitalization, the very minimal number of hospitalization that we have been having, and serious matters that pertains, as you know, from the information we have gotten and the tests that we have been conducting, the virus that we are seeing in country is the B1, B2, and that is where we're noticing that there's minimal symptoms. Some people do have nearly all the symptoms, but most of them have been very mild. And the few hospitalization, let me just point out one of the things that I also got to learn. When it comes to the hospitalization, sometimes people go into the hospital, whether because they feel a bit under the weather, they're not feeling well, and when they are tagged as a hospitalized, it's because either that person went in there because of other ailments. They have diabetes, they may suffer hypertension, and then they are admitted, but then tested, and then proven to be positive for COVID as well. So those are how it has been in the recent days. I understand, however, that there are, just yesterday I got a report from KHMH, there are 2 persons on ventilator. They are monitoring them. So it's been a while that we haven't seen that type of status of person in the ICU. But we are hoping that those persons can, the level of infection can be reduced, and those persons can go back to the normal hospitalization, and then at some point released. We at the ministry, however, as you rightly pointed out, Isani, we were concerned based on the numbers, but we had instead as well increased our surveillance at every point. We have, I think that over the 2+ years, our nurses and our doctors have really learned to study COVID, and so they were prepared. They were prepared for this one, and so persons, and of course those, like I said, those who have tested, while the numbers are high, very minimal of them had to really go to the hospital or be hospitalized. So the number of hospitalization has been very, 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 very low, and there have been no deaths reported based on those matters.
I want to get back to the conversation about the vaccination, only because I know we're having an update discussion. Talk to us a little bit about this second booster. That is not something we've actually been hearing about for quite some time. So what are the numbers regarding people getting their second booster, and is that available for those that are not frontline workers?
Well, let me again just repeat though that while we had launched just before the vaccines had expired, recall that I mentioned we don't have adult vaccines except for Johnson & Johnson. And so you won't find that persons are getting their second booster at this point in time. It was, of course, open to 65 and above, and then just before, I think mid-May, we said let's open it up for everybody who needs that, who wants to take that second booster shot. And so it was open, and it has been open since. However, we are waiting and hoping that we can get those vaccines quite early. As I said, the timeline is within 4 weeks we should be getting AstraZeneca and Pfizer vaccines for adult population. And so we're going to encourage our Belizean people who, one, have not gotten their second dose, or two, who wants to get their booster shot or their second booster shot. What I noticed, however, April and Sonny, and if you I don't have the numbers on me here today, but I think just when I checked last week, the first booster shots were very low. I think we were at about 39,000 Belizeans who had really gone in to take that first booster shot. So there were a very slow uptake of persons going in for that first booster. And likewise, when we get these vaccines, we feel that especially the vulnerable population, those are the ones we want to target. And of course, our frontline workers. I know that there have been a few frontline workers who, at the time before the end of May, had already gone in to get their second booster shots. And so we're encouraging persons, whenever we get those adult vaccines, to go in and get their booster. And for those who are still interested in the Johnson & Johnson, remember that is still available, just that the Johnson & Johnson is a one vaccination. And then you can get a booster thereafter with another preferred, with another type of vaccine. So we are looking at the numbers, April, that in terms of the booster, we won't be able to provide you a good statistics at this point in time because of the fact that we don't really have the other vaccinations on hand.
All right. Well, is there any parting words you want to share with us to end this segment, Minister?
Isani and April, I wish I could have been on the show from earlier this morning so we could expand on most of the other stuff that we're doing at the ministry. Because while we're focusing on COVID, I want to say that I think we have a great team of people at the Ministry of Health and Wellness that has been doing and addressing and working day in and day out. So I want to take my hats off to them. I want to thank them for the support that they have given me, and of course I have also offered my support to my team at every level, and to say that while COVID had taken the front of all of this, we are now focusing as well on our other issues, mental health being one of them, nutrition being one of them, and we have to focus on all the NCDs. We are currently at the same time working with NHI and PAHO, looking at restructuring of the revised health policy for our country, something that will be more better for our Belizean people, one that will be able to provide adequate, affordable, and accessible health care for Belizeans. We're looking at the possible rolling out of NHI at a much faster pace. So there's a lot going on at the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Isani and April, but I want to encourage our Belizean people. Let us not take our guards down. COVID is here to stay. We must live with it. It is now our personal responsibility to do what we must to protect ourselves, to protect our families, and to protect our loved ones. So I encourage people to get vaccinated. And if you have to wear a mask, wear your mask. If you have to avoid public gathering, avoid public gathering. Let us ensure that we continue to do the things that allowed us to put a hold on COVID for a long time. We cannot take it for granted. And while it has been minimized, it is still around. And we just want to encourage our Belizean people to get vaccinated. And for the younger population, I ask the parents, get your children vaccinated.
Right.
Well said.
Well said.
Thanks a lot, Minister, and take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so we take a commercial break at this point, and when we return, as we've mentioned, it's to celebrate CARICOM Day.
Yes.
Stay tuned.